Hi Annabel. Here we have another first draft to talk about, so let's get started. So again, I'll use different colors for different things, although sometimes I forget and use the wrong color, so if I do, I'm sorry, but generally I'll try to use purple for information or content, and blue for organization, and green for language. So the very first thing I noticed in your first draft is that you need to change your header because I'm pretty sure your name isn't I'm a student. So if I know it's easy to get caught up in what you're writing and forget to change it, the little details. So for your next draft, if you will change the date and change the type of essay and the draft number and add your name, that would be great. Then in your title, every important word should be capitalized. And then I thought that your title was a little bit too long and a little bit redundant, because if you talk about knowledge, you don't need to say that you should know knowledge. And so it was a little bit awkward, a little long, a little bit repetitive. So I have a suggestion. Let's shorten it and say important knowledge for couples. What do you think about that? Of course, you can change it to something else if you don't like that. And so then you won't need the, and instead of that, you need for. You won't need should know, and then you should capitalize these three words, but not for, because it's not important. And then I really like the first sentence in your paragraph, but you know the first sentence should be the hook, and the hook should be surprising and interesting and attention-getting. And this sentence, although it's very true and it's a very good thought, it's not really an attention grabber. So I think you should leave it alone. Don't change this because it's good and it's true. I think instead you should just add a new hook in front of this sentence. So just add something here. Just pretend like you don't have a hook yet and just add another sentence at the beginning. So I know you can think of something clever and surprising. Okay, next, I know you're aware that in your introduction you should talk about effects, since in your main points you talk about causes of breakups. But I think your effect of breakups got flipped around to being a cause again. Because you have the main effect of various breakups in people's lives may be thought to arise from a mentality of negative thinking. So actually this arising from, an effect arises from, then you're talking about this is the cause of the effect. And I think what you really mean that the negative thinking may lead to suicide or revenge. So here's the effect right here. But then this language is confusing and makes you think that you're going back to a cause. So I think maybe just clarify the wording here and don't use arise from, and make a really clear connection between one effect of breaking up is mental, and it could lead to drastic behavior like suicide or revenge. And do you remember when we had talked in class about how to simplify your thesis statement? I think I have an idea. So let's see what you think about it. Okay, so actually I think you don't really need this first clause, given that every couple may be unique, because it is a given, so that means it's kind of something that everyone understands. And I think it's unnecessary to say. Although if you decide you really want to keep it, you can put it make a separate sentence for it. So temporarily, at least, let's take this out, and then start this sentence with an although subordinator. So although each couple should, instead of will, I think maybe should would be better. Should always strive to embrace each other so that they can fit into each other's lives as the right partner, comma, trust issues, loss of communication, and the development of self-destructive habits can cause a breakup in relationships. I think you can leave out and in some marriages, because marriages can go in the category of all relationships. Relationships can include both dating relationships and marriage relationships. So then we don't need however. Okay, so to recap, here's what we have. Starting up here, although couples should always strive to embrace each other so that they can fit into each other's life as the right partner, comma, issues with trust, loss of communication, and the development of self-destructive habits, that's number 2, uh, commonly cause a breakup in relationships. So that's my suggestion, and if you decide to go with that, then you may need, you would have kind of a sharp change between, if breakups can cause suicide or revenge, and then thesis statement is kind of a sharp difference there. So you may need to add a sentence here that kind of connects the first part of your introduction with your thesis statement. Okay, so starting your first body paragraph, I think you can be a little more confident here, and don't say may be seen, just say that the existence of trust issues is a key factor that causes a breakup. And I love the way you used leads too. That's good cause and effect language. Good job. So I suggest adding the word possible here, some possible trust issues. And then you have been using a lot of passive in this paragraph. We had it here and here and here. So be careful about using that one structure too much. And actually, I like it here, but here you don't really need it. So you could just take this out and say some possible trust issues include sexual harassment and so on. So all you need is include can be your main verb. Okay, next I see an opportunity to use what we've been learning in class, and if you can find the handout you should have on this, that, these, and those, and find the one that says determiner plus category noun, and that will really help you here, because you have the determiner, but I think it would be clearer and it would be a stronger connection to the sentence before if you have the category noun. So, so think about what's a category for all of these things. And you could say there are some basic ones like factors, and this needs to be plural because it's these, not this. It's not just one thing, but many things. So these factors quickly lead to the loss of the bond, or these behaviors, or these characteristics, or these issues, something like that. Therefore, these issues quickly lead to the loss of the bond that once existed. And that's a stronger tie, and it's using what we learned in class. Okay, next, although you've said some you have some very, very good insights throughout your whole essay, it did stand out to me that talking about this part about expectations isn't really clearly tied to trust issues. And, this is the controlling idea of the paragraph, and so everything in the paragraph has to relate to trust issues, or you'll have to change your controlling idea. So if this is not related to trust issues, expectations, then you need to think of something different to write about in this paragraph. But if you think it is connected to trust issues, then you need to make the connection clearer and write it in a way that shows how it's connected to trust issues. So your paragraph will be unified and you won't be going off to a different topic. And let's change the transition besides. It makes it sound like you just had a random thought and needed to express that thought. It doesn't sound like it's intentional and carefully planned. So change this transition to a more planned one. And I'm sorry to say that you can't use the the words much more because it just tells the reader there are other things, but I couldn't be bothered to think of them. And you don't want to give that message. That's not what you want to say. So either think of one more example of something that attracts a couple to each other, or if you can't think of another example, then just take it out. And you can say, so you have 1, 2, 3 things, and that's enough. So although it's true that there are more things that can attract two people to each other, you don't need to say it in such a generic way. And although you have over time, I would add a little something else, maybe like however, over time, or over time, however, something like that. And this mark just shows the end of the section on expectations. Okay, in the first part of the next body paragraph, we start off really, really well with a strong topic sentence and very well connected sentences about communication. So very, very nice. So I don't have anything to say, any improvements to suggest about this. But then, just the same as in the last paragraph, it looks like you go off to a different topic. You have taking life at different paces of speed. And I think you can connect this to communication really well because sometimes it's okay if a couple progress at different speeds, but if they can communicate well so that they can understand where the other person is at in their life, then sometimes it'll still work out anyway. You know what I mean? But you think about it, and whatever you decide will be great, but this has to be about communication. So, whatever you need to do to make it about communication will be great. So I agree with all of your points, and they're very good points, but they have to connect to the controlling idea, or you need to rethink your controlling ideas, which would also be fine if you need to do that. Okay, Annabelle, one of your strengths in writing, I think, is that you have very good vocabulary. But here in this paragraph, you have a couple of things that are kind of weak on the vocabulary end. Like, I know what you're saying and it makes sense, but it's not really an English way to say things. So I wouldn't say it like this. Actually, what makes sense to me and what I would say is what you have in your thesis statement of self-destructive habits. So I suggest looking up self-destructive habits in the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. It's really helpful because it's made for people who are learning English as a second language. And also look up some synonyms and try to find some other words, but make sure you always check the synonyms in the English dictionary as well, so you make sure it has the right meaning that you want. So I'm confident that you can improve these word choices to something more fits academic English better. Okay, now let's look at your conclusion. So actually, your first, the same as with your introduction, your first sentence is good, but it needs to be a restated thesis, and this is not. So I would add a restated thesis at the beginning. And then I'm not sure, of course, yes, this is your concluding statement, but I'm not sure why I said your summary of main points was missing. I did that a day or two ago because clearly it's right here. So I see it now. So so now if you add your restated thesis, you should be fine.